Okay, so the A band, in the middle of the A band, H zone is presented, that is lighter region. Okay, just you need to remember A band is the dark band, and in the middle of the A band, light zone is H zone because non-overlapping by the actin, and H zone is formed by only myosin. Okay, so that only it is light. And next one, in the middle of H zone, the line is presented, that is called M line. Clear up? Right. And I band is bisected by the dense dark band is called Z line. In the middle of A band, there is M line is presented. In the middle of I band, there is Z line is presented, right? So region between two Z lines is called sarcomere. So one I band Z line and another I band Z line. The distance between two Z lines, the part between two Z lines of the I band is called sarcomere. Sarcomere is a contractile unit of the muscle. They are structural and functional unit of a muscle. So what is the structural and functional unit of a muscle or contractile unit of a muscle is sarcomere, right? So what is sarcomere? Sarcomere means the distance, the region between two Z lines is called sarcomere. So what is Z line? The I band bisected by Z line, means middle of the I band Z line is presented. Clear? Right. And next one, structure of contractile proteins. This is also most important. There is a 100% chance one question from this topic in the NEET examination, right? Structure of contractile proteins. So what are contractile proteins? Two are contractile proteins, actin and myosin are considered as contractile proteins. An actin filament is made of two filaments F actin which form a double helix. So what is the structure of actin filament? Each actin filament which is made up of, with a diagram given, right, each actin filament which is made up of with two F actin. So this is one F actin and this is one F actin. It is look like what? It is look like a double helix, right, which form double helix. And F actin is a polymer of monomeric globular G actin. See here, in F actin, this is F actin, this completely F actin, and you can observe in F actin there is so many monomers are presented. So those monomers are called G actin. This is one G actin, this is G actin, this is G actin, this is G actin. So polymer of, so monomer of G actin. So this is the polymer structure. So many G actins are presented. Here what given, see, F actin is a polymer of monomeric globular actin. So each F actin is a polymer structure which is formed by so many monomeric G actin structure, right? And next one, actin contains two other proteins, that is tropomyosin and troponin. So actin made up of with F actin, two F actins, so double helix, and in the actin there is two different proteins also presented, tropomyosin and troponin. So what is tropomyosin? Throughout the length of the actin, thread-like structure, this is called tropomyosin, and in the regular intervals there is a group of proteins are presented, that is called troponin. So this is troponin complex, this is troponin complex, this is troponin complex, and throughout the length of the axon, thread-like structure is tropomyosin. I think this question given, labeling question given in last NEET examination, right? Okay, last weekend NEET examination, right? Labeling most important actin and myosin filaments. Actin contains two other proteins, tropomyosin and troponin. And two filaments of tropomyosin run along the grooves of F actin double helix, right? Run along throughout the length of throughout the length of actin protein, right? That is tropomyosin, and troponin having three subunits. Troponin having three subunits, it's seen at regular intervals on tropomyosin, three subunits, right? Okay, in the resting state, a subunit of troponin masks the binding site for myosin on the actin filaments. That is the most important. Which protein covers or masks excuse me, which protein covers or masks the binding site of myosin on the actin, that is subunit of troponin. The troponin masks the binding site of myosin on the actin filament. See here, each G actin consists with the myosin binding site, right? At the time of contraction, it is going to be attaches with myosin head. So the binding site covered by what? Troponin, right? Okay. Each myosin filament is a polymer of many monomeric proteins called myromyosin. So each myosin filament is a polymer of many monomeric protein called myromyosins, right? So the actin made up of with F-actin and myosin made up of with myromyosin, right? So these myromyosins are two different types, HMM and LMM. HMM, myromyosin has two parts, HMM and LMM. Heavy myromyosin, HMM, and light myromyosin. Heavy myromyosin are also called cross arm. This region only called anterior portion of the myosin part only called heavy myromyosin, and remaining tail portion is called light myromyosin. From here to here heavy myromyosin, and here this region is LMM, light myromyosin or tail. And the globular head is an active ATP enzyme and has binding sites for ATP and active sites for actin. The globular head, the myosin globular head is two binding sites. One is actin binding sites, upper one, and lower binding site is ATP binding site, and as well as the globular head is an active ATP enzyme. These two are ATP, these two are binding sites, actin and ATP binding sites. And another globular head consists with ATPase enzyme, which is helpful for muscle contraction. We will discuss in mechanism of muscle contraction regarding about importance of ATPase enzyme. Up to this clear, right? The structure of striated muscle, structure of actin, and structure of myosin structures are most important, right? Next one, mechanism of muscle contraction. So sliding filament theory is the most important, right? There is a chance for one question from this topic, mechanism of muscle contraction. Very easy this one. This just you go through the lines of NCERT and this video class. Mechanism of muscle contraction which explained by sliding filament theory. What filaments? There is two filaments, thin filament and thick filaments are presented, right? In the muscle there is two different types of the filaments, thin filament and thick filaments. So these thin and thick filaments are going to be slides on each other, so that only the muscle contraction explained by sliding filament theory, right? So according to the sliding filament theory, contraction of a muscle fiber occurs by the sliding of actin over the myosin. The sliding of the actin over the myosin, so that only it is called sliding filament theory. So sliding of actin over the myosin, when it is takes place at the time of muscle contraction and relaxations, right? Okay. The steps are given below. So what type of what type of the different types of the changes or takes place. So what type of the steps or takes place in the muscle contraction, mechanism of muscle contraction. An impulse from the CNS reaches the neuromuscular junction via motor neuron. See, first step, muscles are excitable. So muscles are excitable when muscles are giving responses. Whenever muscles receives nervous stimulations through the neurons, then only muscles response to the stimulus, that is called irritability. So first, before contraction of the muscle receives nerve impulse from the nervous system through the neuron, that only given here. An impulse from the CNS reaches the neuromuscular junction NMJ, that is called motor end plate, via motor neuron. Muscle receives impulse through the nervous system to where? To the neuromuscular junction. Neuromuscular junction is nothing but the nerve ending connected with muscles, that is called NMJ, also called motor end plate, via what? Motor neurons. Motor neurons only carries what? Motor neurons only carries nerve impulse from